Thank you very much, Rabbi Pilchowski. Our next speaker is formerly a commander in a paratroop combat. Rafael Cohen has more achievements than we have time to list. He has had prominent positions in the JNF emissary in Australia, the Betar youth movement, and the community action centers. He has been involved in the World Likud, the Jewish Agency for Israel and North America, and many more. He is a true master of coordination and management, a huge proponent and enabler of Aliyah, fundraising, and event planning. Rafael has been a huge part of making this event happen, and I'm happy to invite him to the stage.
Shalom, guys. Good afternoon. Very happy that you're here. My name is Rafael Cohen, and since I was 20 years old, thanks God, I had the privilege to work with Zionism and to implement the way I believe in. I started years ago as a shaliach at the Jewish Agency in the JNF in Australia, in Sydney, Australia. For me, it was a shock about how to fulfill for Israeli. Most of the Israelis doesn't understand. For them, America, it's a Jersey garden, it's malls, it's shops. They don't know what is the meaning of living outside of Israel. It's opened my perspective about how our brothers and sisters living in a different perspective outside of Israel. And then I went to another shlichut. In between, I was the Betar youth movement CEO, as the youth movement that's running here. And then I was World Likud CEO, which running also activities with Jewish communities, opening communities and working and building bridge between Israel and other communities. And then I have the second shlichut, which was on America. I lived in Teaneck, and I worked and I had the privilege for 3 years to work to run the Aliyah from North America to Israel. I had the privilege to bring here 6,000 olim, and always had some discussions with people about all the time. In my office, I was trying to ask people, why do you make this move? What was the moment? What was in common to all the answer I got was that in one moment, people were touched. Either it was in the youth movement, either it was in the shul. People were touched by something from Israel. And I was saying to people, it's going to be hard to compete with what America is sometimes providing you materially. But I definitely believe that regarding meaning, there is a lot that Israel can offer you. Regarding the meaning, regarding the content, regarding what you want to achieve in your life. And I do know that it's a big challenge for a lot of Americans that come in here. I do know that many times they are finding it very hard. Most of the time, Israelis will not be able to understand properly how it's to live outside of Israel. They're not going to understand the challenges when living in the diaspora. And many of the people who are living outside of Israel doesn't understand what is the meaning of living in Israel. I think that today we are facing big challenges with our relation in the Jewish diasporas all over, or worldwide. And I would like to speak about 2 or 3 of the challenges, just to put the focus. Today, by the way, I'm the director of Har Herzl, which I had the privilege to follow the way of a big dreamer of the Zionist movement, Theodor Herzl. And there are 1 million visitors a year in Har Herzl. Big majority of them are going to be high school students, primary school students, and soldiers. But when you come in there, you realize basically everyone who's been buried there in Har Herzl is people who tried or wanted to do what's good for Am Israel. It doesn't matter which agenda they came, but they wanted to do something good for Am Israel. And you have a variety of all people from all kind of people who were in Israel. But what's have in common is they are all give their lives, made their shlichut to work for Israel. So just to speak with you about 2 or 3 challenges that we are facing today. And I'm saying that, unfortunately, in every trip I'm going to, mainly to the state, but I'm speaking about worldwide experience. The first thing is the language. In fact, less and less Jews speaking Hebrew worldwide. When you're going to South America, most of the time you're going to speak with a grandparent, you're going to speak with him Hebrew, with a fluent Hebrew. They will know what you're talking about. If you're going to go to the second generation, for the parents, they will be a little bit knowing Hebrew, they will understand some of it. And you're going to go to the third generation, you're going to realize they doesn't know English. They doesn't know Hebrew, sorry. So because the system was being different now, if the ESL, the second language in South American schools, in Jewish South American schools, it was Hebrew. Today, the second language is English. We became a global world. Everyone wants to know English, which makes sense. But what's happened is that the Hebrew being pushed down and down. And Hebrew is not just a tool to speak. Hebrew is values. Hebrew is culture. Hebrew is, if you're a religious soul, it makes sometimes sense that you're going to understand what you're praying. But what I realized from my experience, most of the kids, I remember my kids when they went to Solomon Schechter, when I went to Likud, so their nephew here, like their cousins here, told them, did you become religious? They didn't understand when they were speaking over Skype, they didn't understand why they were wearing suddenly a kippah. I'm coming from Shoam, we're not religious family, but we're traditional. And they went to Solomon Schechter, and they didn't understand that transfer that you're doing as a kid, because you're going to be, sometime what I find it, that if you're going to go to a Jewish day school, many times you're going to pray every day, and you're not going to understand what you're saying. And the other way around in Israel, that you're not going to pray in most of the places. So probably there is a kind of golden path in between. But for sure, the Hebrew language is in a horrible situation in the diaspora. People who go into the synagogue do know it, but rather than that, most of the people will not understand what you're talking about. In the WZO, which I'm working in the last 6 years, we're working about building a lot of programs, virtual ulpans. I'm inviting you, I'm inviting your friends, I'm inviting your family outside of Israel to be part of it. We're trying to strengthen the power of Hebrew. Language is not just a tool. Language is a way to communicate. Language is a way that I will be able to speak with you and to address my thoughts, and without the language you cannot do it. Second challenge that we are facing is a big challenge of anti-Semitism. The WZO is an umbrella organization, and we have 13 departments, which every department is like, it's very similar to a minister. Like every head of department is a minister of issue, of a subject. So let's take, for example, the issue of fighting and combating anti-Semitism. You're going to have a head of department, and his job will be to have events, to run seminars, to raise awareness for anti-Semitism, to fight it as much as he can. So I'm going to give an example. When we went 2 years ago, before the Corona time, we went to Chile. Chile is one of the biggest Arab people who lived in Israel and moved outside. This is the biggest Palestinian community outside of Israel, 500,000 people. And of course, when you learn it, you realize that there is a correlation between. Okay, that's good. You realize that there is a correlation between the existence of the Palestinians groups in order the anti-Semitism. And we had their seminar, and the seminar was original. So you're bringing activists, 200 activists from all South America. They are coming in 3 days. You're trying to get them some tools, first of all, of awareness, second, and brainstorming about what you can be done. We are facing horrible things that are happening in the universities worldwide. When you're going to the campuses in the state, what's going on there, it's really, it's unbelievable. The kids there who are sometimes your age, they're going to school, they have been attacked, literally, they have been attacked sometimes physically, and they don't know how to respond. They don't know what to say. And even sometimes they know what to say, they are feeling such weak minority that they don't know what to do. I realized many times when I went to Starbucks, I realized how many kids are changing their name when they're approaching to order coffee. And in a way, it makes sense that if your name is, I don't know, David is a good name, but if you have a very clear Hebrew name, you're sometimes going to change it to Michael or whatever, or something else, because it's actually part of losing your identity. It's the same thing with the Hebrew, that we are losing our identity. And that anti-Semitism, unfortunately, in the last 10 years, what we realize is that every year, All surveys are showing that. Every year there are more and more violent incidents, which basically showing the numbers of the incidents are growing up. And one of the things that shocked me was that in most of the world today, let's say that you're a kid in Paris, you went to the shul and you came back and someone just told you a dirty Jew, or attacked you or throw a stone on you. So what we realize that most of the kids, 80% of the people who are being actually attacked will never going to be actually reporting the attack. 80%, think about it, guys. 80% of the people that have been attacked will never report about any official report. They will come, they will say to their dad, I've been attacked, someone called me dirty Jew. They will give them a hug and say, that's a price to be a Jew outside of Israel. People in France, people all over, it's a trend that's coming more and more popular, taking the mezuzah and putting it inside a house instead of having it outside of the house. That's something that we cannot ignore. We have to be aware. We have to be aware of that, and we have to strengthen our brothers and sisters. There is a big shift that happened. If in the 50s, Israel was relying on the diaspora, today Israel have to change our perspective. Israel is strong, is a country that's strong enough and have to support our brothers and sisters. Either it's giving them materials, information, awareness, helping them, anything that we can do. Our brothers and sisters decided, we're respecting that. They decided to live outside of Israel, but they're still our brothers and sisters. And we have to find a way to support them in any other way, because sometimes communities becoming weaker and weaker and smaller. And for me, the most bothering thing for me is that nearly 70% of the population in the state today is being defined as unaffiliated. Guys, this is a matter of generation, 2 generations. I'm not coming here to scare you. I think this is the fact and this is the reality, and we have to look about the reality. Nearly 70% of the population in America is being defined as unaffiliated, which means they're not going to the shul, they're not supporting JNF, they are not part of any congregation, they're not part of community. In that way, it's their decision to make, but I think that we cannot give up. We have to fight for it. We have to find the ways. And I think that the best thing that we are doing in the National Institutes about it, say we cannot speak only about the hardcore issues such as advocacy, etc., etc. When you realize that, for example, if you're bringing a good chef from Israel, they're giving lectures, and people realize wherever they are that there is also a normal life in Israel, and they can bond with you about the professional level. I like to bike, I like to run marathons. When I'm meeting my colleagues that are running marathons, and we're having something in common, that's a different story. The story, your relation starting from that relation, from the professional level, from that perspective. Baruch haba, Rabbi Berg. So we're starting from a professional level, and that's, believe me, I think that's the best tip I can give to every advocate, to start from a professional level, to speak about our family, our hobbies, about those things, because the other things are much more harsh to deal. The third challenge I want to speak to you, and the last one, is going to be about assimilation. In a way, it's very connected to what I spoke about, the unaffiliated. We're talking about numbers of assimilation are getting more and more higher. Maybe it's not a surprise for you. I said that in the previous, when we said before, I was saying that for me it was shock. I was in the previous, like few years ago, I was working with Israelis in America. Believe it or not, just in New York, you have 250,000 Israelis. I'm talking about Israelis who left Israel and moved to live in the state. In all North America, you have around 1 million Israelis. All our leaders in the past, such as Rabin, Sharon, they were calling them Yordim. And I thought, like in the last 10 years, I think it was not smart thing to do, because sometimes we're running in former Soviet Union about Jews, if they are Jews, if they are not Jews. Here you have 1 million people who are for sure Jews, and I want to hug them. I want to include them with my family, although they made a decision to go away right now. Because what we found, that the most assimilated group in North America is the kids of the Israelis. So when I'm just having quick overview here, I'll see without too much research that most of you will define yourself Orthodox, modern Orthodox. I'm talking about the Israelis. Most of them will be secular. They're secular. They are not connected to shul. They are not connected to community. They doesn't have the culture of being part of synagogue. They are not part of something. So they're coming there. Usually they have less money, a little bit at the beginning at least. They're coming with relocation. They will set their kids for the public school because the schools are amazing in North America for public school. They find amazing schools. And then you realize that in the third year, you're going to start to celebrate the Halloween. In the fourth year, etc., etc. And then the kids will come with a girlfriend, which is someone from his class. So I don't hate anyone. I don't have anything against them. But I do believe that as a Jew, we have to work hard, to keep our Judaism. But what's happening in that you're having less Hebrew, less identity, more chances for assimilation, and that's a big challenge for the Jewish people outside. I do think that the Israel job, the Israel state job, and mainly the national institutes. The national institute are four organizations. We're having the Jewish Agency, we're having the WZO, we're having the JNF, and we have Keren Yesod. All the idea of establishing them was when Benjamin Zev Herzl, the first Zionist Congress, 1897, came and said, let's build connection to Am Israel. Let's start something. He was the first startupist for the Jewish people. He came with idea. He came with idea to start. Think about it. He wrote a book, Alt Noed. You don't have any case in the history that someone wrote a book, and from the book you're having a nation. I didn't find yet a similar case to that. From there, he took it 3 more steps. He created, in 1897, in the first Zionist Congress, he created the WZO. And all the other organizations were being built as a tool for the WZO. The WZO is the owner of the JNF. And the JNF job is to purchase land and to recycle water, etc., etc. What I'm saying is I'm calling you here to be involved with us, to come with creative idea. By the way, in the previous setting that we had, and now I'm seeing much more younger faces, and I love it, because worldwide we're having a problem in the Jewish communities. Most of the people who were involved became involved, and we left all the youngsters will be sometimes involved, and if they're going to be involved, they will be involved in the online platforms. It's important that we're going to meet. It's important that we're going to do. I'm challenging you to come to join us in any way. The ideas and the cleverness is with you. And I welcome you to come. And